For the first time in American history, there are now more people who have no religion than there are people who are evangelicals or Catholics. But not all these people are diehard Sam Harris atheists. A lot of them are still sticking to some sort of woo or spirituality or this guy, Deepak Chopra. I don't really follow Deepak Chopra. Mostly I find him kind of ridiculous. But recently he was on the Rico Deco podcast, and Kara Swisher asked him directly about transhumanism and biohacking. And I thought his response was kind of interesting. And also, not shockingly, he said some kind of silly shit. So let's check it out.
Another areas of this course is biohacking and transhumanism and living forever. These concepts have taken a hold in Silicon Valley, including mind-altering drugs, psychedelic drugs. Big area of not just, everyone can laugh about it, but some of it's really fascinating. Do you think about these ideas of...
Yes, I do, and I'm quite amused by them.
I'm amused. It's amusing.
Here's the lowdown without any censorship. And, what people need to understand is, at the deepest level, there's no such thing as a body or a brain. Okay, at the deepest level, what you call the body and even the brain is the interpretation of a perceptual activity in consciousness. When you say, I have a body, which one do you mean? The fertilized egg, the zygote, the embryo, the baby, the infant, the toddler, the teenager, what you're looking at in the mirror right now, or what will disappear in the future? There's no such thing as the body is not a noun, it's a verb, and it changes in every second.
This idea that the body is not a noun but a verb is classic Deepak Chopra. He loves this idea that if anything's in motion, then there's not a real thing there, which seems a little bit also just kind of ridiculous on its face. But at the same time, this does open the door to a lot of transhumanist ideas. In that, transhumanists don't want to be tied to this body, or to the extent that we are tied to a body, we want to be able to transcend it, to move past it, so that we're not just stuck in, the meat suit. There's this idea that, the body is just a meat suit. There's nothing sacred about it. To the extent that it exists as an engineering project to improve upon.
So if you're going to do, cryo-freezing, you're freezing something that is actually an anatomical structure but has nothing to do with reality.
So you're freezing an anatomical structure that has nothing to do with reality. So, how does this make sense? I genuinely don't get it. Something is an anatomical structure. Is that the equivalent of saying something like an anatomical structure is a unicorn because a unicorn isn't part of reality? Unicorns exist in reality to the extent that it's a story that exists in reality, right? So at some level, an anatomical structure exists in reality, even if it is like a fictitious thing or like a useful fiction, as you might say. It doesn't exist in what the fuck is reality?
That's number one. Number two, death and birth are built into the continuity of life. In fact, in biology, we use a term called apoptosis. Apoptosis means programmed cellular death. So your stomach cells die every 5 days, so you can have new ones. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to digest food. Your skin cells die once a month. Your skeleton recycles 3 months. The brain that you're using right now to speak the English language was not the brain that learnt the English language. So all this stuff about cryosurgery and downloading information is based on a totally false construct of reality, number one. Number two, death makes life possible. The loss of the memory of death is called cancer. When cells forget to die, they are cancer cells. They are on a quest of individual mortality at the cost of the host, which is the whole body. So anybody who's on the quest of individual immortality is fooling themselves. They are an activity of the total organism, which we call the planet or the universe or whatever. So these biohackers are off their nuts, totally nuts, okay? And they're all mostly male, by the way.
They are.
Okay?
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Deepak,
because,
most people I talk to are white men. But go ahead. Move along.
they're narcissistic, self-absorbed, egocentric entities thinking that their body is a container of awareness. The awareness cannot have a container. Awareness or consciousness doesn't have a form. Because it doesn't have a form, it can't be contained. Your body is an awareness. Awareness is not in the body. Consciousness is not in the body. The body is an experience in consciousness. The mind is an experience in consciousness. Okay, so that's one thing. So much for these immortalists and transhumanists and all these totally crazy people. They're fundamentalists. They're ideologues, just like religious fundamentalists. Now, on the psychedelic drugs, and this whole idea of the
mind altering, or enhancing,
mind altering,
mind enhancing, really.
Enhancing. I think there is a role for them in treatment of depression, of severe anxiety, or chronic illness and pain, and all these issues, and that we have to slowly look at the research and see the role of whatever it is, whether it's ketamine or mushrooms and so on.
But Deepak is pro-drug, so I mean, that's cool.
But it's interesting because the same people are doing one or doing the other. And I agree with you. The narcissism is massive in terms of, I just was meeting with someone who was talking about ridding ourselves of all senescent cells. And I'm like, but some of them are okay. Like skin. I was using the example of if you don't, skin is dead. And then it was interesting, but the concept was defeating senescence versus, is it senescence? Senescence, whatever.
Senescence,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So it was interesting, but that was the goal, was stopping it.
Narcissism has brought us to the brink of extinction, and these guys are perpetuating it.
All right, I want to thank you for saying that. You are now my best friend.
It's funny how like a lot of Deepak's fundamental views do actually kind of map onto like transhumanism, but he just kind of like throws the whole thing away. I feel like he's not giving transhumanism enough credit. I mean, you could say he's very much like just straw manning the whole movement. And especially like a lot of transhumanism is just like life extension and just working towards being healthier and just maybe living an extra 5 years. A lot of transhumanism is very basic. It's very simple. And just, to throw out the whole movement like he does there, it's kind of lame. Also, it's interesting to think that everyone always talks about how challenging it is to move from a biological system to mechanical system. There are all these problems with us like merging with machines, philosophical problems. But I mean, at the same time, if you think about it the other way around, if we were machines and we were merging into biological life or trying to do this whole thing backwards, you can just imagine like us as machines thinking like, well, God, there are all these problems though. When you get like viruses and you get like bacteria and you like 90% of your gut is bacteria or something like this, or there's more, you're made up of more bacteria than you are of like your actual human cells. That doesn't really exactly make sense. So maybe we shouldn't merge into biology. Maybe it's ridiculous, the idea that biological life could exist. I mean, it's problems. Just at some level, if we're going to do ambitious, crazy things like merging with machines, some of these things we just have to like bite the bullet and be like, yeah, that is ridiculous, and there are these ridiculous consequences that could arise, and maybe there will be like multiple iterations of yourself in a cloud or something, and maybe that seems ridiculous, but it's also just like reality. If you're interested in more of what Deepak might think about transhumanism, futurism, biohacking, he does have a TED Talk about this. It's only 10 minutes long. I'll put it down in the show notes below. And you can see him say more crazy shit about how the body is a verb and not a noun. And he says shit like, your physical body is not physical. And your material body is not material. So if you want to see more shit like that, it's out there. And that's Deepak Chopra on transhumanism.